did a great job in helping Max jump up through the order, throwing the pit cycles, put on the correct set tyres throughout most of the race, tyres pretty quickly and made him do a lot of stints on the medium tyres because, as you will realise, the hard tyres didn't work at all. Because especially when the Alpines went on the hard tyres, it was very clear the hard tyres were not going to work in today's cold weather. Oh no! But of course, there was one team who completely ignored what Alpine were doing. Was Mercedes and Red Bull actually paid attention? Second place, Lewis Hamilton, 9.5 out of 10. Yeah, he also mocked up qualifying, but just like Max Verstappen, he got his way up the order. And, and I don't know where he is now in the championship, but he is a lot closer to Max than he was about 4 or 5 races ago. So well done to him. George Russell, third place, grabbed his first ever pole position on Saturday. But as for his performance over the weekend, it's 9 out of 10 for me. Did well to hold on to the lead at the start of the race. Did a good job trying to fight off Leclerc, but of course it was pretty obvious that Leclerc was always going to overtake him. But nonetheless, despite his tyres fading off and of course him struggling towards the end, he still did a good job to get a podium, meaning that of course he's finished in the top 5 in every race he's finished so far this season, with of course the exception of the sprint race at Imola. Carlos Sainz, 8 out of 10. Got completely mucked around by Ferrari's laughable pit crew who can't do anything to save their lives. I mean, let's face it, if Ferrari were tasked with the assassination of Julius Caesar, Brutus would have stabbed himself to death. They are clueless. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, yes. I mean, of course, with Carlos Sainz, they put him on soft tyres with 22 laps to go. Once they realised the hard tyres were not working on Leclerc's car, even though, yeah, I know the tyres were fading off towards the end for Sainz, but having said that, though, this should have been at least a win and maybe a podium for Ferrari, at least on first and third place. But as we'll get on to later, actually, I really do need to delve into detail because, of course, Sergio Perez finished 5th, 7 out of 10, started down in 11th after being kicked out in Q2. As it was, though, he didn't have Max's pace today. I don't really need to go any further than that. It's 7 out of 10. Decent job, but not particularly great. Of course, at the French Grand Prix, as you probably remember, Carlos Sainz had a slow pit stop, and then once he was released from the pits after the safety car was brought out for his teammate accident, he nearly ran into Alex Albon, which meant he got a 5-second penalty. And then to make matters worse, when he was halfway through overtaking Sergio Perez, the team decided to call him in for a pit stop. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Ferrari, you are the one. And Naki Roweda, that man should be made a poster boy for job security because he should be arrested for fraud, for pretending to be a competent strategist. He is he must have someone's naked photo somewhere, like the Alcan family's naked photos, because that guy, he is literally stealing a living at this point. He is a thief. He is committing daylight robbery in front of our eyes, and frankly, Ferrari are completely destroying my enjoyment of Formula One now because it's so obvious Max Verstappen and Red Bull are going to walk to this championship win. They're going to win this championship with like 3 or 4 races to go because Ferrari are making it far too easy. And now, of course, we've got to get onto the topic of the unfortunate Charles Leclerc who finished down in 6th, who, I mean, after 15 laps on those rock-solid hard tyres that did not warm up at all, he was called in to put on the soft tyres. But frankly, I mean, once he came out for his final stint, he just couldn't be bothered. And I can't blame him. This team, they are a joke. I mean, honestly, at this point, I would not be surprised if when Lewis Hamilton retires, he gets replaced by Charles Leclerc at Mercedes. There's only so much one driver can take. I know he's going to turn into a pariah by Ferrari fans if he ever does leave the team, but you know, the Tifosi need to spare a bit of sympathy for him because this team are literally going to turn him into John Alesi 2.0 if he does not leave. He is going to end up wasting his career in the same way John did back in the 90s. Honestly, this team should be ashamed of themselves. What in the world were they thinking that those hard tyres were going to work on Leclerc? Because, of course, once he got onto those hard tyres, he got overtaken by George Russell, and then he got overtaken by Perez and Sainz. And frankly, what was the point, really? He came into the pits. Yeah, he closed him on Perez, but frankly, I think he just knew there weren't enough laps to get back up the order, and it was just a waste of time because, let's face it, this team's strategic team are even more of a joke now than they were when they had Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen driving them 4 years ago. I mean, if Ferrari cannot be bothered to do things properly, then I cannot be bothered talking about them anymore. I just don't care. I do not care. This team, they have the fastest car on the grid this season. They arguably have an even better car this year than they had in 2018, but yet they are blowing this championship even more quickly than they did between 2017 and 2018. And I think from what I've seen from the championship table, Mercedes are now something like only 10 points behind Ferrari in the constructor standings. It's absolutely pathetic, and I will not be surprised that even if, without winning a race this season, Mercedes actually beat Ferrari to second place, because frankly, Ferrari are absolutely embarrassing. From starting second and third, they end up finishing fourth and sixth. Fourth and sixth from second and third on the grid. Like, I know the weather was cold, you couldn't get the tyres to work properly, but it was so damn obvious from watching the two Alpines go around a track that the hard tyres were not going to work. Like, why can you not be able to watch the progress of other teams around you? Is it that hard, Ferrari? Did you honestly sit there and think Charles Leclerc was going to Harry Potter those tyres up and fire them up to temperature on a cold track with rain spitting intermittently throughout the race? The answer was clearly no, but you, Ferrari, need to just disappear from the face of the earth. You were absolutely embarrassing. I mean, if I did a video about the French Grand Prix, I mean, there's a reason why I didn't do it, because I was on the verge of blowing up into flames after that race. I could remember 7 days ago, I was like, seriously, Ferrari? Are you this stupid? I mean, yes, I know Charles Leclerc was responsible for crashing his car, but those tyres he was on was already getting old, and you should have called him in at least 2 or 3 laps earlier, but you didn't, because apparently Ferrari know everything. They don't need to take advice from me. They don't need to take advice from you. They don't need to take advice from TV pundits. Nah, they're cleverer than us. That's the Scuderia Ferrari are always smarter than everyone. What does a random bloke like me sitting behind a computer screen know? Oh, I'm just an idiot. I don't work for Ferrari. Let's just ignore me. Let's ignore you. Let's ignore the TV commentators. Let's ignore ex-drivers, ex-team managers. What do they know? What do we know? Ferrari knows better than all of us. Enough of that laughing stock of an organisation. Lando Norris, 7th place, 10 out of 10. Great race. He had a great race today in Hungary, and he also did well at France, where he also finished 7th. But of course, because McLaren's car hasn't been that great this season, and the fact they're now down in 5th place. You got that Mario Norris. He is consistently delivering strong results in qualifying and in the race. He is absolutely exposing Ricciardo for being, well, frankly, a bit of a fraud at this point. Fernando Alonso, 8th place, 9 out of 10, deserves to finish ahead of his teammate Ocon, who for some reason decided to try and shove Alonso in the pit wall at the start of the race. And then, of course, Alonso got really angry and, he was trying to overtake Ocon after the pit stops. Ricciardo jumped the pair of them. It wasn't, both drivers were not very smart today, but I can't really blame Alonso for trying to re-overtake Ocon after the pit stops, because Ocon is nowhere near as good as Fernando. I don't know what on earth is wrong with Ocon, I beg your pardon, Esteban Ocon, that is. who gets an 8 out of 10 for finishing 9th place. Yeah, he beat Alonso in qualifying, but all I'm going to say about Ocon is that he's the sort of driver who would be very happy, who would do everything to beat his teammate, even if it meant he lost time to the car in front of him, and the car behind him and his teammate would gain time on them, and even in this case, end up overtaking him and his teammate when, of course, Ricciardo was right there after the pit stops. Esteban, mate, you're having a decent season, but you're not doing any more to convince me that you're any better than a decent midfield driver. You're just mid. I just can't be arsed with you. I don't even like you at all. You're just an arsehole. We've seen it before with you when you clashed with Perez at, 2017 Belgium, 2018 Singapore, and then, of course, hitting Max Verstappen at the 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix that year. Even though you were a lap down, you should have just got out of the way of Max, let him through. You were down in 13th place, doing absolutely nothing of interest. I mean, let's face it, yeah, you're ahead of Alonso in the championship standings, but you're not that good a driver. And to be honest, I'm not sure you're any better than Oscar Piastri, who's been singing his arse all season because, of course, there's not enough seats in Formula 1. 10th place, Sebastian Vettel, 9 out of 10. Yes, of course, as we all know, he is going to retire at the end of the season, but judging by the way he's been driving, he doesn't look like a man who's going to retire at all. In fact, he's still got at least probably another 2 or 3 good years left in him, but of course, with Aston Martin having made no progress over the last 18 months, the writing is on the wall for Sebastian, and to be honest, I'm not even sure McLaren actually came in to make him an offer to join them next year because, of course, he is now entering his late 30s, and I'm not entirely, and to be honest, I think they're building their future around Lando Norris now. But nonetheless, it was a great performance from Sebastian Vettel, of course, got knocked out in Q1, but had a great race, looked after the tyres well, and got in front of his teammate. He gets a 9 out of 10 for his performance, and, a lot of fans are going to miss him after this year. That's absolutely for sure. Lance Stroll, 8 out of 10, first and all point scorers. Whatever. Pierre Gasly, 8 out of 10 for finishing 12th. Got knocked out in Q1, qualified 19th, but had a good race, whilst, of course, others were getting into trouble. But unfortunately, this year's AlphaTauri is absolutely awful, so scoring points in it is pretty hard. 13th place, Zhou Guanyu, 7 out of 10, decent race, but if I'm going to be honest, Bottas was quicker for most of the race. 14th place, Mick Schumacher, 7 out of 10. Yeah, Magnussen had a problem, and of course it meant Mick ran most of the race in front of him, but it was a decent performance nonetheless, and he got past him, Ricciardo towards the end. Daniel Ricciardo, 6 out of 10, yeah, take on the 2 Alpines halfway through the race, but then he collided with Lance Stroll, punted him off at turn 3, got a 5-second penalty, and then after that, it all just unravelled. I don't know what on earth happens to Ricciardo these days, but, whilst he was running close to Norris at the start of the race, he just faded off as the race distance went on, and frankly, if I'm going to be honest, if I had to pick who should leave F1 between Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo, it really should be Ricciardo, but I really don't know what on earth is going to happen to Ricciardo after this year, but I have to say, on the basis of these performances, I would not particularly miss him that much if he was to go as well. 16th place, Kevin Magnussen, 6 out of 10. Had a problem at the start, had to pit early, meaning he did a pit stop more than most of the drivers, and he stayed at the back. There wasn't much he could do because I don't know what on earth was wrong with his car, but tough race, but I can't really give him more than 6. Alex Albon, 6 out of 10. Nicholas Latifi, 6 out of 10. Both were running at the back and couldn't do much because, of course, this is one of Williams' worst tracks, with a lack of downforce on that Williams on a track that demands a high downforce throughout, and, of course, the Williams being one of the cars with the least downforce, it was always going to be a tough weekend. And I suppose the only positive we could say is that at least he got both cars to the finish. And in last place is, of course, Yuki Tsunoda, 5 out of 10. He went to the pits, then he came out, and then he spun, and then after that, he just ran towards the back. And frankly, I don't really think this guy has a future in F1 after this year because I mean, I've lost count how many times I've just watched Yuki Tsunoda completely throw away, like, fairly decent performances and then end up spinning, crashing, hitting someone, go off the road, lose his temper. It's just... I mean, this guy doesn't even seem to be on the same level as someone like Takuma Sato and Kamui Kobayashi, so I'm just going to leave it there. And of course, Valtteri Bottas, the only car to retire from the race, 8 out of 10, qualified 8th in qualifying. Looked like he could potentially score a point, but of course his car broke down, having mostly dominated Zhou the whole weekend. But of course, Alfa Romeo always seem to have a technical issue of them sort, whether it's pit stop problems, poor strategy, driver errors, I don't know, mechanical issues. This team, I know they're sitting in 6th place right now, but if they carry on like this, and if AlphaTauri and Haas can start getting their cars in the points more often, that 6th place could come under threat. It really could, and the thing is, they're not able to score points with Zhou either, who just doesn't seem to be particularly good enough at this moment in time. Yeah, so that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Hello everyone, this is Crystal Racing with my very, very, very late Belgium Grand Prix Crystal Score race review. Let's get on with it. Max Verstappen, 10 out of 10. Started all the way down in 14th place and was leading the race by lap 9 out of 44 laps. Once he got, yes, the safety car helped him out, but let's face it, Max Verstappen was just too good today, just way too good at Spa-Francorchamps. He just loves the circuit. Teammate Sergio Perez, 8 out of 10. Goodness me, Perez, this was your chance to win the race and you got absolutely destroyed by Max. There's nothing else to say. Carlos Sainz, 8 out of 10, started on pole. But just like Perez, couldn't live with Max. George Russell, 9 out of 10. Did all he could in the Mercedes. 9.5 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. Great performance and got very lucky with that Ferrari strategy error. Charles Leclerc, 8 out of 10. Honestly, Scuderia Clownari, what were you playing at? You know, I understand you were trying to go for the fastest lap, but when I saw where Charles Leclerc car was when he was exiting the pit lane and where Fernando's car was on the normal racetrack alongside him, ready to blast past him up the hill into the corner on top of the hill, I knew Leclerc was toast. And of course, not only to make matters worse, he had to overtake Alonso in the final lap whilst doing his fastest lap attempt. He failed to get the fastest lap. And because of the speeding, because of course the damage he picked up through a visor that was disposed of by Max Verstappen's car earlier on in the race, his speed limit sensor was burnt out, and because he went over the speed limit in the pit lane due to the sensor not picking up his car going too quickly in the pit lane, he was then docked 5 seconds, meaning that he ended up being classified P6 behind Fernando Alonso. Congratulations, Ferrari. You really are a special type of stupid. 7th place, Esteban Ocon, 9 out of 10. Great comeback drive after that engine penalty. 9 out of 10 for Sebastian Vettel in his final race at Spa-Francorchamps. Another brilliant performance by the 4 times world champion. What can I say? Got through traffic well, looked after his tyres well in that tractor of Aston Martin. It's really a green Alfa Romeo in disguise. 8.5 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. Great return to form for the Frenchman. And my driver today, Alex Albon, 10 out of 10. Held up a bunch of much faster cars than Williams to score a point. And the rest of the finishers, yes, Lance Stroll, 7 out of 10. I don't like talking about him, and I don't like praising him, and I don't like the bloke full stop. 7 out of 10 for Lando Norris, who pit strategy was a disaster for McLaren today. Not much he could do, and the McLaren just looks absolutely terrible since the summer break. 6 out of 10 for Tsunoda, getting absolutely slapped again by Gasly. 6 out of 10 for Zhou Guan Yu. 5 out of 10 for Ricciardo, who was doing well earlier on, but then dropped off in true Ricciardo fashion. Does the guy deserve a seat on the grid for next year? I don't think so. 7 out of 10 for Magnussen, whose horse was not at the races. 6.5 out of 10 for Mick Schumacher, who couldn't do anything. And Nicholas Latifi, the last to finish. And for the first time ever on the Crystal score, I am disqualifying a driver because Nicholas Latifi, you took Bottas out on the first lap. You went across the gravel and then you went and nose dived into Bottas. And frankly, I'm not having it. You're getting disqualified. Just get off my list. Bottas will not receive a score because he was an unlucky victim on the first lap. And Lewis Hamilton will get 1 out of 10 for the fact that he tried an overtaking manoeuvre around the outside of Alonso, going up the hill, and somehow managed to land his wheels over the top of Alonso and flipped his car and then landed back onto the ground. And frankly, he deserved to retire. Thank goodness Alonso's car came out unscathed, because otherwise, Hamilton would have probably had to serve a grid penalty at the following race at Holland. So thank you for watching this video of Crystal Racing, and I'll see you again very soon. And it's back for another video. This time I'm going to be ranking every driver lineup on the F1 grid from 10th to 1st. Starting with number 10, it's got to be Williams' lineup of Alex Albon and Logan Sargeant. I have to say this is actually a mark of how strong the grid is, because Alex Albon is a decent driver, whilst Logan Sargeant might become a decent driver, but he is not quite there yet in terms of being one of the seriously competitive F1 drivers yet, having just come off a season of finishing 3rd in the Formula 2 Championship. This will be the first time we see an American race in F1 since 2015, and of course the first full-time driver since 2007 with Scott Speed. 9th place, and it's also another tricky one. It's going to be the AlphaTauri duo of Nick De Vries and Yuki Tsunoda. Truth be told, this lineup is down here in 9th place because Tsunoda, for me, is not a great driver. Although I think Nick De Vries will be the one carrying the bag for the ex-Minardi boys next year. Of course, Red Bull keeps saying that the team is up for sale, but no one wants to buy it. And of course, with Red Bull's new powertrains company, of course, I'm pretty sure they'll be using that as leverage to sell to other teams. If any other teams on the grid want a new engine, maybe, Williams decide they want a cheaper engine and they go with Red Bull powertrains and so on and so forth. In 8th place, it is the Alfa Romeo duo of Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, I beg your pardon. I think I don't need to explain this too much. Bottas is the older, experienced driver, there to solidly score points week in, week out, and Zhou will be there, continuing to develop, improve his consistency and all-round speed. Pretty much a solid 8th place. And in 7th place, might rattle a few feathers, particularly with a certain fan base. It's got to be Aston Martin with Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso. Alonso is still a great driver, but he's surely going to be beginning to fade away due to age. And as for Lance Stroll, I've not seen any improvements from him since 2 years ago, if I'm going to be honest. Ever since the team changed its name to Aston Martin, he has stagnated. He has continued being erratic. One weekend he'll be fantastic, the next he'll be bang average, and of course his driving remains just as hazardous and as erratic as before. It's not good enough from me. 6th place, it is got to be McLaren. Lando Norris has been absolutely superb in the past 2 years, destroying and sending Daniel Ricciardo into retirement, whilst Oscar Piastri is someone I expect very, very good things from. He won 3 consecutive junior titles, 2019, the Formula Renault 2-litre Championship, 2020, the Formula 3 Series, and of course 2021, the Formula 2 Championship, progressively improving every series he goes to and winning first time out. Of course, He will be struggling slightly due to having been forced to take a break last year due to no funding and no space for him on the F1 grid. Alpine's poor handling of his contract was an absolute joke. And frankly, he's made a bug out of them by switching to McLaren, because I expect McLaren to possibly produce a very good car next year in 2023. 5th place. This may be a surprise, but it has got to be the Haas duo of Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg. With MoneyGram funding the team next year, they will be having access to more resources and more financial power. And I fully expect Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg to be up to speed. Kevin Magnussen carrying the team last year on his shoulders, with, of course, Mick Schumacher crashing so far too often and eating into the team's budget, very limited budget by I add. And, of course, Nico Hulkenberg proving that whenever he stood in at a Racing Point and Aston Martin, that he could do a decent job in short notice, proving the talent is well and truly there, of course. When he did stand in for Checo Perez at the British Grand Prix and the 70th anniversary Grand Prix for Racing Point 2 years ago, he outpaced Lance Stroll in qualifying, and of course, he was running ahead of Lance Stroll in the race in the 70th anniversary event, only to pick up a flat spot, very suspiciously enough. I don't know whether that was to save Lance's plushes, but we'll never know. I mean, it's not like his dad runs his team. Oh, no, they'd never do a thing. But, yeah, 4th place, it is Alpine, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. This is arguably the strongest lineup in the whole of the midfield. You know who I support, and it's not to be Red Bull, Perez and Verstappen. Truth be told, Verstappen, in my opinion, is the best driver on the grid, but his driver lineup is weighed down by the fact that Perez is happened to be the number 2. But having said that, though, it was good enough to win the Constructors' Championship last year due to, of course, Red Bull having the best ran team, and, of course, the best driver in Max was Perez. Missed out on runners-up spot in the Drivers' Championship by just a few points, although Max really didn't help matters at Brazil in regards to that. In 2nd place, it is the Ferrari duo of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc got arguably the fastest driver on the grid over a single lap, and Carlos Sainz, very good driver in terms of his all-round skills, but he's not ultra-fast, nor is he someone that I would describe as a particularly great front runner in a top car for some reason. He seems to be much better driving a midfield car and driving around problems and actually being able to push a car to the full limit, although he does have a lot of strong technical understanding. However, the move to make Frederick Vasseur the new team principal at Maranello might undermine him next year, since, of course, Vasseur had a very strong relationship with Charles Leclerc at Sauber 4 years ago, and, of course, we all know Leclerc is probably going to get all matey with him again. And, of course, in 1st place, it is the British lineup of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell at Mercedes-AMG Petronas. Look, Lewis Hamilton's a 7-time world champion. He's still got it. He might have lost half a tenth in terms of raw speed, but his all-round race pace and overtaking skills is still right up there. I mean, yes, he's going to be 38 years old, but as we saw in the second half of the season, he completely wiped the floor with George Russell. As for George Russell, though, I think he's going to continue improving. Last year was a test trial year, and he'll push Hamilton to the limit. So, best of luck to F1 next season. Oh my goodness. I don't even know what to say. This is honestly just hilarious if you think about it. Yes, if you heard the news, Oscar Piastri put out a statement saying that he had not actually signed a contract to drive for Alpine in 2023 on his Twitter. Within the space of just over 24 hours, Alpine have not only lost Fernando Alonso to Aston Martin, but Oscar Piastri has rejected a seat to race for them next year. Of course, it does seem to be, well, the story goes like this. Laurent Rossi, the head CEO of Alpine, offered a one-year contract extension to Fernando Alonso, with the option of moving to Alpine's sports car team once 2024 comes around, meaning that Alonso would do one more year of F1 before leaving. However, it appears to be that Fernando Alonso decided to then choose Aston Martin in order to continue his F1 career into 2024 and beyond, since, of course, he was also very well aware of the fact that the team have been very keen on moving Oscar Piastri into the race team. However, Piastri himself has now come out and completely bluffed Alpine by the fact that he and his manager Mark Webber have been in negotiations and talks with McLaren with a view to join their race team for next season. So as a result, Alpine are now a bigger circus than Scuderia Ferrari. They have been completely outwitted and outmaneuvered by the literal shitlord himself, Fernando Alonso. And frankly, it's just hilarious, really, to think about it, because, you know, now you could argue Fernando Alonso has shot himself in the foot, because, of course, for all we know, Piastri could have well have been moving to McLaren anyway. But this is really embarrassing for Alpine, because I think this is kind of confirmation that a lot of the drivers and team managers that work with them, such as Marcin Budkowski, Daniel Ricciardo, and Alan Prost, all departed from the team because I think they saw something wrong with the team, with the management, the lack of funding. You know, Alpine are trying to pursue F1 glory, but on a restricted budget. Yes, I know the cost cap is there, but there just doesn't seem to be enough investment in the facilities, enough, getting the right staff members in to really push car developments further, because, they finished fifth in the 2020 constructor standings with Ricciardo getting 2 podiums. They finished fifth once again last year, and was, yes, indeed, they are sitting in 4th place. They're absolutely no closer to the top 3 teams than they were, really, frankly, 2019, 2020, last year. They're still in the same place. Goodness me, this is an absolute laughing stock, of course. I know many people have said this Piastri situation is now having parallels to, of course, the Jenson Button contract saga of 2004 and 2005 when it was at BA Honda, which, of course, the first time around in 2004 when Jenson signed a contract with Williams, the F1 contract recognition board said, no, you've got to stay with BA Honda. And then, of course, he did sign a contract with Williams the year later to join them in 2006. But, of course, when Williams announced that their BMW engine deal was ending, he was then forced to pay £16 million in order to rip up a contract. So, yeah. But as for Piastri, though, it does seem as if he's got some leverage, that young kid. 3 junior titles in 3 years from, the European Formula Renault 2-litre series, the Formula 3 Championship in 2020, and, of course, the Formula 2 Championship from last year. He's hot property. There's got to be some talent in this kid. He's only 21 years old. And, I mean, for me, he's a far more hot prospect than Esteban Ocon. And Alpine really have shot themselves in the foot. I mean, to be honest, it does seem as if a move for Piastri to go to McLaren is now looking very likely, in spite of McLaren's poor start to a fairly average season, where, of course, they're currently sitting in 5th place behind Alpine. But does seem as if a lot of people's opinions of Alpine is pretty low right now. It's all, I mean, I can't help but laugh. I mean, apparently 1 minute after Piastri and came out with a tweet saying he had not been contacted and he'd not been put down an agreement because, of course, in that press release that Alpine put out, there was no quote from Piastri, nor was there any quotes from Mark Webber about Oscar being happy and raring to go for 2023. It's really weird. It seems as if Alpine completely panicked and dropped the ball. Of course, for we know, I could be wrong on this Piastri situation. He could still will race for Alpine next year, but after a tweet like that, it doesn't look particularly great. And I have to say, Alpine might well be tempted to save their blushes into getting another driver for next year. And of course, I have got a short list here. Pierre Gasly, Valtteri Bottas, Daniel Ricciardo, Alex Albon, Nick De Vries, Phil Porcheri, Felipe Drugovich, Zhou Guanyu. Okay, I know it gets less likely, but apparently, you know, at a time when Piastri announced that tweet, Alonso then immediately, 1 minute after, put out a video of himself spending time at his own karting resort down in Spain, once again calling out Otmar Schaffner's bluff, who apparently he said that Alonso was on some boat somewhere in Greece, but turns out to be he just didn't have a clue where Alonso was. So, yeah, Alpine, you really are on a hiding to nothing. And, you know, I've seen, well, I mean, in the past week, you know, Vettel announced his retirement. Nicholas Latifi topped an F1 practice session. George Russell got a pole position. Fernando Alonso joined Aston Martin. And, of course, Piastri denied joining Alpine's race team. It's all completely unravelled so quickly. I've never seen so much carnage into the start of a summer break. I'm going to look through all my tweets and see what else is there. I mean, of course, I can't remember what happened. I mean, oh yeah, Piastri's contract with Alpine expired on July the 31st. Now, of course, Piastri has been a reserve driver for Alpine for the past 2 years, and it's all really stupid. I mean, Alpine really have dropped the ball on Piastri as well, because, of course, I think, you know, it's pretty clear that Alpine wanted Alonso to carry on into 2023 as Ocon's teammate, but they also apparently wanted Piastri to sort of sit on the bench or try and get a seat at Williams. But I mean, Williams aren't that particularly keen on getting Oscar Piastri when they've got Logan Sargeant and Nick De Vries on the sidelines. You know, apparently they're more keen on getting those two drivers because, of course, Williams, despite being a back market team, they do have their own interests at heart, and they're not going to want to try and babysit someone else's junior driver. So Fernando Alonso just basically waited for Oscar Piastri's contract deadline to expire, and then of course on the 1st of August, of course, I know a lot the way it was announced, it felt like April Fool's Day, but no, it was the 1st of August, not the 1st of April. Fernando Alonso dropped the bombshell that he was indeed going to Aston Martin. I don't know why. I mean, I have to say I was so baffled when I heard the news. I thought, you're going from a team who's currently sitting 4th in the championship to go to a team who's 9th? That's just really odd. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Stroll family's management of that team. They've become a lot worse than what they are now than what they were like under Fort when they had BJ Maria under the Force India name. So Alonso decided, you know, despite pretending to Otmar Schaffner that he was going to, oh yeah, I'm keen on signing a contract extension, he just basically shot them in the face, really, shot them in the back of the head, I beg your pardon. Comical, really. They really, I mean, Alpine got completely pokered, snookered, I don't know the terminology, but they've basically lost a game of high-stakes poker with Fernando Alonso, who, as we all know, loves to screw people in the back, in the back, really. He likes to stab people in the back. What are you doing? Trying to outwit Alonso. Most people can't outwit him. He's always one step ahead of you. And Mark Webber, well, Mark Webber, I think himself doesn't particularly rate Alpine highly, hence why the hell he's been, trying to pursue a seat at McLaren with, of course, Daniel Ricciardo underperforming once again this season. And, I think I'm going to have to leave it for the next video I do, where, of course, I'll be talking about who will drive for Alpine in 2023 if Piastri does indeed leave and go to a team like McLaren. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Hello, this is Crystal Racing here with another video about the overachievers and underachievers of Formula 1. Of course, I'm talking about the nations who have provided drivers, so I won't be talking about teams, and I won't be talking about any specific drivers, but I'll be talking about the nations that have supplied these drivers. I'm going to start off with the nations who missed out. America, 57 drivers, 2 world championships, and 22 wins between their drivers, the likes of Mario Andretti and Phil Hill becoming champions. Other drivers who won races in F1, Rich Gimfer, Peter Revson, and a couple of others I forgot. The most recent drivers have been Alex Rossi and Scott Speed. They're only drivers to have raced from America since during the 21st century. Before then, Michael Andretti and, of course, Eddie Cheever, who both achieved podiums. The statistics for America exclude the Indy 500. Next up, also missing out on both lists, South Africa, 25 drivers, 1 world championship, 10 wins, 36 podiums, 3 poles, and 5 fastest laps. Most of them coming from Jody Scheckter, who of course became South Africa's only world champion in 1979, but he also remains the last driver from South Africa to race in F1 when he retired in 1980 due to safety concerns at the age of just 30 years old. Of course, his last season of Ferrari was a disaster, just 2 points, failing to qualify for a couple of races, and frankly just lost his love for the sport. Canada is up next. Now, I considered putting Canada on the underachievers list due to performances of the likes of Latifi, Lance Stroll, Jacques Villeneuve Sr., and a couple of other drivers such as Alpine who really struggled their Grand Prix outings. But amongst their 15 drivers, they've won a world championship thanks to Jacques Villeneuve. Could have had more if it wasn't for Gilles' premature death. 17 wins, 39 podiums. 3 of them coming from Lance Stroll, 16 poles, most recently from Lance Stroll again, and 17 fastest laps. That's pretty good going, considering, of course, Canada is a small nation, not located in Europe. I'm going to make a big deal out of the separation between Europe and the rest of the world. South Africa, another 1 miles away from the rest of Europe, and America, more known for, of course, IndyCar and NASCAR racing. Of course, a lot of their focus mostly goes on those series, and their drivers are not exactly the most keen on making the pathway to Formula 1. Spain is another country that I would class as having achieved what was expected. 15 drivers again, 2 world championships, 33 wins, 112 podiums, 23 poles, and 26 fastest laps. That's pretty good considering Spain isn't exactly known for being the most fond of Formula 1. Having achieved more success in World Rally Championship and MotoGP, with, of course, Marc Marquez destroying the opposition. But the vast majority of those statistics do come from one extraordinary driver, Fernando Alonso, who, hence why Spain miss out on a place on the overachievers list, because it is literally just mostly Fernando Alonso. And of course, Carlos Sainz did become Spain's second Grand Prix winner at this year's British Grand Prix, becoming the first Spanish driver to win in 9 years. And of course, the likes of